Hey guys, welcome to the project review for the Design Trends 2019 Student Challenge. So I wanted to make this open-ended, and I wanted to spend a couple minutes here stalling a little bit to see if I can't get some people live to join the video and kind of be with me live to ask questions. And I'm just hanging out in Adobe XD. I'm starting to do a couple of website mock-ups for a new class I'm going to be teaching on Adobe XD. So I'm super excited. I love it. If you're already used to Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, this is a breeze. And you're able to kind of make these wireframe mock-ups that are almost seem like they're live, which is really cool. So I just showing you something I'm into, something I'm excited about. There's also mobile app design. Let's see if I can't open it. I'm just stalling for a few minutes to see if people can come up. So I was doing a mobile app design, and you can actually make this a live wireframe, which is so cool. So quick to do this. I did this in about an hour. Just playing around with it last night. I can go click on play or live preview, and I can actually do that. How cool is that? Adding a little animation to this mock-up. I can even click on here and bring up investments. Bam. So fun. So anyway, so just something I was playing around with. So I'm going to pop into Photoshop. I'm going to wait just one more minute. I'm going to bring it up live on my screen on my other computer so I can be able to see your comments. Let's see if I'm live. There I am. I'm going to go ahead and click off here, turn myself off on the microphone. So I'm just hanging out here. Say hi if you're here, if you've joined yet. I see a couple of viewers here. I know this isn't the best time in the world. I have a global audience. So some of you guys are sleeping. Some of you guys it's in the evening. So sometimes it's hard to find the perfect time. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first project. I have, I believe, 13 total projects. And if you see your project and you just happen to be live, just say a shout out if you have any questions. I'm going to try to peer my eyes over to my other screen and look at comments from time to time. So the challenge was to do a design trend that you see popular in 2019. But in the end, I decided to make the project open-ended, and you could submit any type of project. It did not have to adhere to a design trend. So some of you guys did that. I know that Dia did do that. She did kind of pick a design trend, which was these bold pop of colors and kind of the opposite colors. So you see kind of these bold oranges with kind of cool colors kind of colliding together. So I wanted to start with hers because I really appreciated her project. I'd love to see the unity between these three different pieces and how she has a whole series, and you kind of see how the series would go on multiple posters. So I really enjoyed seeing that. I love her type choices. I love her spelling of the future. If you've ever seen, the future is actually a design firm, or I guess a design group, education group, called The Future on YouTube, and they're just fabulous. They spell it the same way, but I like her spelling. And I kind of like kind of her spacing, and everything kind of seems to work really well. And I did ask her where she found the photos, and she was able to find them online, but she cut them out. They were originally just standard photos with backgrounds. So she cut these out and did a great job at cutting those out and kind of keeping those 3D elements there. So good work in Photoshop cropping those out, or kind of removing that background and kind of doing some lighting and shadows there. So that looks really good. And your little splash of color behind here with the ink marks. So in terms of any kind of constructive kind of feedback, I would kind of even wonder, I kind of like this bar, but it makes me wonder, since these are already in kind of this black kind of case, I wonder if you remove the little thin bar, if it would make it more clean and kind of more simple. Some way to simplify these just a little bit, because I really love the photography inside, and you want to really make sure you focus on the photography, and the color helps the viewer focus on the whole goal of this, which is the pictures of the sculptures for the museum. So maybe that means fading back a little bit of this kind of color explosion in the back, still keeping the strong color, but maybe kind of reducing the transparency on the splatters, or the different colored splatters, to make it kind of an more even blue color in the case of this middle one. And so also making sure that blue is being able to be read on the green. I can read it. So if I can read it, I guess everybody else can. So just kind of making sure that is strong and being able to be read. But I love how she put it on here. So I think this is an excellent job. So yay, you did your homework and actually picked a design trend. So thank you so much for doing a project. So I'm just going to work my way down. Whatever project comes up next, comes up next. So if you're live, say hello. I'm going to go ahead and click off. Okay, so this is Chris Heath's project. He has three different ones. He also did a design trend, and he kind of was playing around with Cheetah. Cheetah is a 3D program for Mac, and so he was able to download Cheetah and play around with the 3D elements here. And this looks really fabulous. You know, I play around with Adobe Dimensions a little bit in my 2019 Design Trends class, but it looks like the effects on here are fabulous, especially the reflection. It just looks like you want to reach out and touch that ball. And I love kind of this clear, how it reflects the environment behind it. So he's just kind of training himself to learn those 3D elements a little bit to incorporate that into a design. So this is kind of a practice project for him, working with 3D elements and how they reflect. You see the two reflected there in the gold bar. So he has a couple of them. I'm going to go ahead and close this one out to show you the other ones. So he kind of has some, he actually took this photo himself and was able to replicate it in Cheetah. And I think Cheetah is a pretty affordable 3D program if you guys are looking for a way to kind of get some 3D objects more in your designs. And so I love this kind of reflection, how that's working there. So I'm going to go ahead and close this one out and show the next one. Kind of another example of just showing this dynamic of reflection, very realistic reflection effect, and how he set the background. Okay, so let's go ahead and click off. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Let me go start here at the beginning, kind of work my way. Okay, so this was another project, not necessarily a design trend, but kind of a practice project with photo manipulation. So he kind of showed me, he posted how many photos they used to create this, and there's quite a bit. So this was a separate photo right here. Let me go ahead and grab my brush tool, see if that's ready to make edits. There we go. So this is a separate image. These are all separate little images that he was able to put together, and he even added a reflection. So just kind of practicing that photo manipulation a little bit. This looks fabulous. I love that really strong pink punch of color. It really helps bring out kind of the flavor of the strawberry, or kind of that same color tone and color hue. So wonderful job. I don't see any major kind of malfunctions in terms of how it looks. Let me go ahead and get rid of my ink. This is cut out really nicely, beautifully done. I like your balance of strawberries. There's not too many. This is wonderful. The reflections on the image you download, they look really great. In terms of the package design, I would just make sure your curves, I guess this was an okay curve. It seems to go a little bit shorter there. But let me zoom in on this a little bit. So perhaps maybe closing the gap here, you don't want it to close it completely, but maybe just a little bit. So you don't want to have this be disconnected. So this seems a little disconnected. So if you just brought this up maybe to this area, it'd feel like it kind of hugs that little open empty space. So in terms of your typography. And with this, I hate, just as me personally, but I don't like doing the all caps with script, because just personally, I don't prefer it, because sometimes it's hard for all cap scripts to go well together. But this could work in your case. It just depends on what the client branding is. They may have that in their branding. That could be a little logo that you have to use. So I think this is a great job. In terms of shadowing, notice how it's kind of a dark gray shadow. I almost wonder if you double click your layer of your shadow and make it a kind of I wish I could do this here. Maybe I can get the eyedropper tool and sample some of this dark color here, double click and make it a little bit darker, but keep it kind of still in that same family of color. Just make it darker and do the shadows that way, so it doesn't look like it's a cool shadow on a warm background. It's a warm shadow on a warm background, and it might look a little bit more realistic that way. So great job. Go ahead and close that and go to the next one. Okay, so this one was just submitted. They did a project. This is a project for my photo manipulation class and on Udemy, and I think they actually did a fantastic job. In some ways, I like their type choice better than what I did. So I think they did a wonderful job. It's more simple and clean than what I did. I did kind of a little bit of a messy project, but they got a lot of the basic fundamentals of casting shadow. So you see how he has a little bit of a cast shadow here. What I would do is even feather that further. And what you could do is you could take the eraser tool or get a mask on and kind of shave a little bit of that off, but not completely. Maybe like a 50% opacity, so you're kind of letting it slowly feather out. So it's not such like a strong light. You can kind of feather out that lighting. But you did good because the lighting source is here, and so you have it cast going that direction, which is exactly where it would be cast. This type choice is wonderful. I don't know what type choice that is. I'd say railway, but it's something different perhaps. So if you ever come back on, you want to say what type choice the run and gold is in, I love it. Very simple and clean. And I would probably, what I would do if I was being super duper picky is reduce kind of the highlights right here because it could be distracting for the rest of the shoe because this isn't the most attractive part of the shoe. So maybe reducing kind of the lighting on there, maybe perhaps, there's a couple ways we can do that, but just kind of highlighting those areas and toning it down just a little so it's not so shiny in just one part of the shoe, kind of equal shine across the whole shoe. So awesome. All right, Sandra. So Sandra did a design trend. She's playing around with the 3D trend. I didn't go back to her post to see how she accomplished that. I'm assuming it's going to be Photoshop. It looks like it could be Photoshop. Just the way it's rendered, I can tell that's a style in Photoshop, that kind of bevel effect. So I think she did do this in Photoshop. So this is a really fun kind of graphic. What I would do is maybe even add a shine because you have all this shine going on in the background. So you could take a little bit of that shine and have it be a reflective material. And you could do that with the 3D tools in Photoshop, add a little bit more reflection when you go to the properties panel of that particular shape. So I'd add a little bit of a reflective material so you don't have this kind of flat kind of material when you have all this shiny stuff going on in the background. And I would probably maybe take the shiny stuff in the background and maybe kind of tone it down a little bit so that Happy Christmas can really shine a little bit, especially when you make it a little bit reflective. You can even separate the words Happy Christmas. So you can maybe have happy and then like Christmas tucked here. So it's able to be a little bit bigger on the square, especially if this is going to be an Instagram post. You want to make sure the Happy Christmas is a little bit larger. And if you stack them on top of each other, you'll be able to do just that. But I really like that. So thank you for practicing those 3D tools. Those are really easy to do in Photoshop. My Design Trends 2019 class has a lesson on how to kind of get started with a 3D tool with typography in Photoshop. All right, so this is the next one. Ariella, hopefully I'm saying that right. Okay, so this is, I'm not sure if this was a design trend or what particular trend this was, but in terms, I think it was an Instagram. I need to go back and look at the comments on that one. Let's just assume it's kind of a generic Facebook or Instagram post. I kind of like this background, the bokeh, I guess it's called bokeh effect. That's these little blurred lines that the natural kind of blurred circles you get in photography when you let the lens get a lot of exposure. It kind of blurs the light and creates a bokeh effect. Um, so I kind of like that background, and she brought that out with maybe some vector elements. I don't know if you hand drew that or if you got a vector resource online and popped them on there. In terms of typography, what I would do with your typography is have a little bit more contrast with your type. So I'm going to grab the brush tool, and I would maybe make this a little larger and maybe make it bolder so that maybe you have happy here and then New Year down here. You have a nice like kind of block of text, so you don't have kind of this empty gap here. And adding contrast with size, style, and weight with your type will be good. So having happy and maybe a different font, and having New Year maybe remaining in that font or trying out a different font, maybe a sans serif font, and kind of having practicing some font pairing might make this a little bit more interesting in terms of the typography. But I do like the background. I would take these little circles and maybe reduce the transparency a little bit so they're not overpowering the Happy New Year, because that is the most important part of this piece, is Happy New Year and the message that that delivers. So thank you for doing a project. Okay, so I thought this was fun. This is cool. I like this one a lot. So thank you, Mandy, for doing a project. So this was for a billboard, and I really love the photo manipulation she did. I'm not sure all the pieces that she put together. I think she maybe did all of it. So she added kind of this cool fire effect coming out and the elf riding on top of it. This looks great in terms of shadows. I can see the shadow of the elf cast here. This looks really great. I can't tell that they're separated images. So she did a fantastic job with making all of those images come together as one unified element. And I like this bold sans serif type choice. It looks like it's railway. I use railway all the time, so I can kind of spot it a mile away, but that Y looks a little different, so maybe it's not railway. But I would just be careful. There's a little bit of spacing. You might need to do some manual kerning. So kerning is kind of manually changing the spaces between the characters, because sometimes with certain typefaces, they don't have perfect spacing by default. And sometimes you as the designer has to use your eye and tweak that a little bit. So this all looks great, but when you come down to the Y, it just seems like there's a little bit too much space here. So maybe closing a little bit of that gap, just a little bit, to tuck that O and U next to the Y. But other than that, I love it. And I just have the background's perfect. For a billboard, you have 5 seconds to capture someone's attention. So you don't want to have too much information. And so this is nice and clean. I would say I have one constructive feedback, and that's with the website. See, right now with the website, I can't tell what it is in 5 seconds. I can tell what it is in maybe 10 seconds, but it's response, energy. Like, I'm having a hard time breaking all those words down. So this is what I've done with billboards with clients in the past. So I'll just do response, energy, drink. I don't think I spelled that right, but just for example. So I'm going to make this a little bit larger and make that a different color. And just make that railway and make it bold, or make it black. So this is what I would do, is I would break down the words. So what I would do here is maybe do energy, and I spelled energy wrong, but we'll just roll with it. Bring out some other type of color to help break down this type further. It may be yellow. That might be the only color that's going to punch through all that. Okay. And so now you can read it a lot better. If I spelled it right, let me spell it right. It's driving me nuts. Okay, so energy drink. You notice how that's a lot easier to read and break down the information. And to make it even better, you can make this .com a different contrast. So making that maybe medium, so that .com doesn't read as one big word, kind of just one further way to break down the type. I'm just going to add a drop shadow to this to bring it out. And I'm going to use something cool called the spot. Let's see if I can do this real quick. There's my spot healing brush tool. I'm just getting my spot healing brush tool. I'm just going to eliminate this. If you ever use this in Photoshop, it's awesome. Spot healing brush tool. I'm just going to brush over this. And it's going to magically take the background and fill it in for me, so I can bring this down, kind of see what it looks like. So I might need to make it a little bit bigger. So anyway, just don't worry about the misspelling. So we'll figure that out. But it's kind of a way to break it down. You can even reverse it and have response and drink in yellow, which might look a little better than what I just did. Or put it up behind a yellow bar that goes across and then put it in black or something. Or bring out some of the blue or the red. So I love this. This was very wonderfully done in terms of putting all these photos together. The top part is perfect. The photos are perfect. I really, really enjoy this. I would love to see this on a real billboard somewhere. I think that'd be really special. So thank you, Mandy. Okay, so I think this was a design trend one. I think there might be multiple ones. Maybe it's just this one. I think it's just this one. I know a couple of you guys sent a couple different versions. So I guess this is taking some design trends in terms of using gradient meshes. I'm not sure. That looks like it could be a gradient mesh. I kind of see the pink and then the orange. So it's kind of hard to get dynamic gradients like that without using the gradient mesh tool in Adobe Illustrator. So I see how they did that. What I would do with this is kind of my first comment would be to simplify. So finding a way to kind of reduce some of the design elements to make the content shine. So in terms of what's the most important thing here, well, the woman is the most important thing. She's the one that's on tour. She's a singer-songwriter. I would maybe balance out your type a little bit. So maybe have Jane Rupert, super big, singer-songwriter across. So let me get my tools here. So Jane Rupert would just stay that way. I would maybe try in all caps so it stands nice and bold together. And then I would have singer-songwriter maybe across the bottom. And then April maybe kind of bring that kind of contact information here. And the worldwide tour can go on some kind of solid bar across the bottom. And maybe find ways to simplify it, maybe because you have kind of some circles going on and then you also have some straight lines. So kind of committing to one particular shape might help simplify it. So maybe committing to the circles or just committing to a couple of these shapes that go across, kind of how you have here, and kind of doing a simple gradient background and kind of getting rid of some of the circles. It'll simplify it a lot more. And try luminosity blending mode with her, or test out a few blending modes. She's looking a little dark in terms of the shadowing. So if you do like a luminosity, she might blend in well, but you probably tried all those and this is probably the best one you had. So just kind of experiment with blending modes just in case you haven't had a chance to do that. But thank you so much for doing a project. You guys are learning a lot. Okay, so I believe this is a Facebook post. So this is design trends. We're doing the pop of color. So another thing is also simplification. That'll be the theme for a lot of this feedback will be simplification. And so a lot of times you can have a lot of great design elements, but when put together, it starts to look a little busy. So we need to be careful of that. So we have kind of, let me get my tool here. We have this brush tool here, or this pattern in the background, which I really like. But I almost wonder if we can screen it back or reduce the transparency just a little so it doesn't compete with the photo, or eliminate the photo. But since the photo is pretty important to this piece, you might want to just screen back or reduce the transparency on the pattern, or kind of have it fade into or fade into nothing. So, you know, have it blend. So you don't have it across the entire piece. Maybe it blends down at the bottom, it kind of disappears. So I see the pattern kind of going on top of your type there. So just make sure that type is always on the top layer so it doesn't have that graphic over top of it. And I have always had a hard time getting outlines to work. So you have this kind of thin line. I always had a hard time getting thin outlines to work on type. So either make that a bolder kind of thickness on the outline, or maybe make it white, or find a way where you don't have to do that thin little border around it. I've never been able to get that to work. This doesn't look so bad, but I've always had a hard time. And so maybe another way you can simplify is taking the texture off of the alpha pixels, because then you have texture here and you have texture here. That's a lot of texture. So kind of picking one and picking one area of texture and sticking with it. So cool. I like that's a very interesting color combination. It's very much grabs my attention. So thank you so much for doing a project. Okay, so so this is for an app. And I need to go back and ask if they did these icons, because I think these icons are incredible. These are cool icons. If you did those icons, let me know if you're live. Bojan or Bohan? I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, but I love those icons. So let me know where you found those, or if you did those yourself. That's incredible. So I like the position of the different phones. What I would do is looks like everything is the same size. So we want to have contrast in our layout design, which is called balance. We want to have larger elements combined with medium elements and combined with smaller elements. So right now, everything is about the same size. So we need to change that. We need to make this Mood TV a little bit bigger and make this a little bit smaller, so we can have kind of that balance of design size. So perhaps you can have the phone pretty large right here, and maybe you can shift these over and have those right down here. And maybe all of this Now on Apple Store can all be lined up together right here on the bottom right. And you can put this extra little image you have here, right here, going across the top, but much smaller, just like a little background element. So you have a large item, you have a medium item, and you have smaller items, and they all work together and they don't all try to compete for your attention at the same time. So right now, these all elements. I don't know which one to look at first. So providing that hierarchy in size will help kind of let the user break down this information. So thank you for doing the project. All right, so she does have a second one. Okay, so this is the second one. I think we already did one of hers. So I love this gradient going across. I think that looks great. I think you did a luminosity blending mode, but I can't tell, but I think it's really neat. It's got a nice light. She's not super dark. She has this nice blended in angelic kind of blending mode applied there. So I like that. Experience the difference. I would make that a little bit bolder because I lose that, especially when I zoom out. I'm losing this. So either put a bar behind it, a solid bar that goes across, or make it a bolder thickness, um, make it a bolder weight. And then with Salon Zoe, is this kind of a font that you're kind of doing your brand? And if so, you can't change it, that's okay. But I would maybe do like a more contemporary sans serif font as opposed to a very traditional font, because this is a very contemporary image and a very contemporary style. So I'd maybe stick with a contemporary typeface, maybe a sans serif, something really simple that might help match the typeface with the style of the photo. So thank you for doing multiple projects. Okay, so I asked a few questions on this one, and this was actually adapted from another source. So it's more kind of just practicing Photoshop and kind of getting an idea of layout. So this is more of a layout kind of design rather than a product design. So I love the coffee bean photo. It's got a very good emotional approach. Like, I really love this image. It's nice and zoomed in. I feel connected with this image. I love the colors. They don't overpower. So I feel like your overall layout is great, where you have this nice big photo here and you have your type right here. But what I would do is add even more balance and keep that photo and the product image at the forefront. This is the most important thing right here. Let me change my color here. I don't know how it got switched. And this is the next important thing. So you're kind of connecting these two together. And so this probably needs to be a little bit smaller and maybe kind of keep it in this area right here. So maybe instead of having this feel pop into the beans, let's not have that. And let's have feel the real smell kind of in this little area. So you're kind of keeping that a little separate. So just kind of some pointers in terms of typography, and make sure you don't have too much gaps between particular words. So that's a pretty large gap. So I would just close it just a little bit. You don't have to have them so close that they're touching. That's not good either. And so I would maybe see when you have a script type. Here you kind of have a handwritten script type. Whenever you have spacing between script types, it looks like it's not working. It should kind of connect like that. So either find one that connects or maybe do a sans serif font or a different typeface for that particular the. But I like the colors. I'm able to read it. And once again, using thin strokes, I know you do that to help pop out in the background, but sometimes those thin strokes, it's hard to make those look good. It really is. So I would maybe reduce the thin stroke on this reel and find another way to get it to pop out more. I see you already have a drop shadow applied. So just kind of some little tips. But yeah, practice makes perfect. So you guys are getting a lot of good practice with these projects. So I believe this is the most up-to-date version. There was another version. I think this is the most up-to-date one. So this is a wonderful layout option. So let me kind of zoom out so we can really get a good sense for the blocking. So the most important thing is this kind of Santorini. That's the most important thing. I guess it's an advertising kind of piece for that particular town. So I think the balance of photo being up here, this is good. This is great. And I can really kind of focus in on what it is. So I can read and digest this information very easily. Just a couple of pointers and tips. As I see, you kind of have some ragged right alignment. And kind of maybe you did some hard breaks instead of doing kind of a paragraph that kind of automatically kind of cuts your sentences. You kind of did some hard breaks and pressed shift and enter and made them yourself. But what I would do is go and do, let me show an example, see if I can do this. Let me grab some generic text and get a text box going here. I could probably do this in Adobe Illustrator better. Okay, so here I am in Adobe Illustrator. This is a flyer I'm doing for another class. So this is kind of a paragraph, but what I did with this paragraph is, you notice how it's to the left, it's a line left, but it's also lined flush to the right. And how I did this is I went over to alignment to my paragraph and I did this one, justify with last line a line left. And it'll justify it to the left, but it'll also get rid of all those jagged edges so you can have kind of more of a complete box shape. So you don't have the kind of the ragged, you don't have this this et there. So just kind of cleaning up those columns and making them more flush and aligned on both the left and right sides will really help. Maybe even increasing some of the leading or the spacing between your lines might help, just a tad. And maybe you could probably even get away with making a slightly thinner typeface since that's so bold up here. Your header, your little subheading is so bold. But I like it. So what I would do is the learn more is really big. It's like, whoa, it's overpowering. And it almost overpowers the Santorini. So I would maybe reduce the learn more a little bit, maybe put it in a solid bar that goes all the way across in red and put learn more instead of having a pill shape. That might help kind of keep with this nice clean look. And then, or make Santorini just a tad bigger, or make the photo a little bigger. You have a lot of space here you can work with to even make that, pull down that photo just a tad. So pulling down that photo maybe another inch or two. But I like this a lot. Okay, we're getting down to the last two. I saved one of my favorites for last, so don't worry, I'm getting to your project if you know who you are. So this is another one done in, let's see, not Adobe Illustrator, but Affinity Designer. So Affinity Designer is another vector option just like Adobe Illustrator, but I think it's even better in some cases. And so they did that kind of a really simple V kind of logo mark or symbol, and I think it just looks clean and sexy. I really like it, just really clean. There's not really a lot of constructive criticism because it looks great. I think this looks wonderful. So I just show off your work a little bit then. Okay, so I saved the best for last. I love this one. So this is so wonderfully done. The type hierarchy is beautiful. This is stunning. And this is a little blurry because I have a high retina display. So Photoshop will, if it's not a super high resolution image, it'll make it a little blurry. So this doesn't do justice to how beautiful this is. I think this is fabulous. I don't have a lot of negative criticism because I think it's all positive. So look at this wonderful type hierarchy and contrast. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in and tell you why I like it. Okay, so let me get my brush tool. Why can't I do that? Let me get a new layer. Maybe that'll help. There we go. Let me make that smaller. Okay, so this Frost Jack, or Jack Frost, which is clever for this time of season. Notice how that's bold and how that's thin. Contrast, right? If that was all bold or all thin, it wouldn't have the same readability. Notice how this type is bold. Also notice how this is small. Also notice how that's gray and that's dark. So you're noticing a theme of contrast. You got some thin, you got some bold, you have a little bit of light, you have a little bit of dark. The most important elements are dark. The least important header elements are lighter and gray color. So not everything is coming at you at the same time. There's subtlety. And that's why I like this. This is a beautiful gradient from blue to red down here on the right. And notice how it breaks up the whole piece. If you just had an all white ticket, which I think is how they are now, if you had a whole white ticket, that would kind of just be kind of boring. But adding this wonderful dark solid color helps break down this otherwise boring piece. And the only wonder is if I've never seen a barcode on a colored background. I don't know if the gradient would affect the scanning capabilities, but that would just be such a detail you don't have to worry about with this mock-up. But that would be just a question if this actually to become a real project, to see if you could get away with putting a barcode on a colored background and have it still scan. And that's literally the only thing I see. I think this is wonderful. Beautiful colors, wonderful typography. Study this. This is a great example. Notice how they put kind of some type going vertical, and it kind of helps if they had this going horizontal. It just kind of breaks it up a little bit. So you're not having everything go horizontal, having some things going vertical. That's less important. Helps kind of break it up so you don't have as many elements in the same orientation. And the logo is a perfect size. There's lots of beautiful spacing right here, lots of margin. I love to see margin and white space. And so excellent job. So I love how you guys did all sorts of different types of projects. Let me know what project you want to do next. I want to do another design challenge for next week and give you guys like 2 weeks, maybe through the Christmas holidays and into the new year to work on maybe a bigger project. I'm getting ready to release a couple of classes. Maybe we can figure out maybe something around that. I'm really playing around with XD and I love it. So maybe we could do something with web app development or something in the future. That would be kind of neat. Just let me know what you guys are into, what you guys want to learn to become a better designer. So I'm going to do my little shameless plug. So if you've taken any of my Udemy classes, please leave a review. It's how I'm able to get my name to other students and to continue to do this for a living. I love to teach and I want to continue to teach as long as I can. So please leave a review. And if you are in my masterclass, this is my first masterclass series. I do have a second masterclass series called the Graphic Design Masterclass, The Next Level, which is right here, Next Level. I don't know why it's highlighting both. Let me refresh the page. Anyway, well, the next level is an intermediate next step level after you've taken my first masterclass. So if you've taken my first masterclass, check out the next level to see if it's for you. And I also teach classes on Skillshare. I have a brand new 2019 designs class. This is also in my first masterclass if you want to watch those lessons. So if you're on Skillshare, I have 60 classes now. Please check them out, leave a review, check out my other classes to see if any of those are interesting. And my last thing, check out my YouTube channel. I'm posting kind of some random lessons from upcoming classes. So just kind of subscribe, check me out. I'm also on Instagram. So I'm done with my shameless plug. And so now we can kind of get back to talking about our next project. Let me know what you want to do, and we'll have a project that's due the very beginning of the year. So that's it. Thank you guys. If you have any questions, anyone who's live wants to ask a question, let me know. I'm getting ready to cut off, but I've enjoyed this time with you guys. Let me know of another time. I see there's 5 of you guys live. I'd love to get that number higher so there's more interaction and more questions going on. Please let me know of another time that works better for you and we can do it. Because right now it's 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Not sure if people are working and that's why they're not able to come live. Perhaps an evening session, Eastern Standard Time, might work for you. Just let me know. All right, love you guys. I love you as students, and please feel free to leave a review on any of my classes and let me know what I can do better to help you.